What's up, guys? So we got ourselves a solar flare. I of course can't predict when these happen, so I kind of jumped on in the middle of it. But see the way this thing is kind of cracked open here? That's a flare. So it's energy from the sun kind of creeping past this convection cells in the photosphere, releasing this big burst of energy. This might create a coronal mass ejection. We won't know unless we watch. So, maybe this will launch a bunch of stuff at Earth, and if it does, maybe that leads to aurora. I don't know. But the fact that I was able to catch it, I was actually just about to pack it in because these conditions aren't very good. But thankfully, I just kind of slewed over the telescope, took one last look at this thing before packing it in, and saw it going. So thought I'd jump on and show all of you. Because I don't know if you joined me for the last few live streams, but we were kind of waiting for this thing to pop, and it never happened. Or it would happen like right after I logged off of the live stream, which is really annoying. But yeah, it's going. If you look over here on the histogram, you can see that all these like little squiggles over here off the right are these bright points in the sun that are kind of bursting right now. So I'm time lapsing this right now. So this whole thing, I'm going to create an animation for, and you'll be able to see how it evolves and how this energy kind of flows through this area. I actually just modified my telescope too to hopefully make it a little bit sharper at the expense of a little bit of contrast on the in the features. So we'll see how it looks when it's all done. So cool. This is live from my telescope on the sun. We are witnessing a flare in action. So how cool is that? We get to live stream a solar flare. It's my first time being able to do that. So proud moment in my personal history of doing this. So you can see like how it's like really bright right there. You'll see that brightness kind of flow through these cracks. It's actually evolving like in real time too. Like you can see this changing like as I talk. So it's really active. Let's actually zoom in a little bit more. And guys, I'm sorry about the conditions. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just the atmosphere. It's why I don't usually do this so late in the day. It's about noon here in Arizona. And what happens, of course, when the ground heats up, you get all these convection currents in the atmosphere, and it makes everything all wiggly. So it's not as steady as it is when I do these in the morning. But you're still able to see what's happening. So I'm still going to live stream it, even though it won't turn out as sharp as some of my other time lapses. You're still able to see kind of what's happening here. But yeah, sorry, there's nothing I can do about the squiggles. We'll have moments where it's steady, so I hold out for those moments. So anyways, talking about what we're looking at here, if you guys just joined. So if it's your first time actually following my content, just know that I do have a solar telescope in my observatory outside. So what I'm doing is I'm remoting into my observatory that's just in my backyard, where I have a telescope that I've modified specifically to look at this. So it's looking at the solar chromosphere, which is the first layer of the solar atmosphere. And in this layer, you can see how the plasma follows magnetic field lines. You can see spicules, which are the little fur things that you see. You can see filaments, you can see prominences, and you can see all the activity around an active region. Now, an active region is an area where the magnetic field of the sun has heightened activity. It starts looking very tangled, and it begins drawing on the convection cells to the point where the convection processes no longer function properly on the sun. And that's what creates sunspots, because material is allowed to cool and get darker. And then that energy builds up and then eventually releases in the form of a flare and sometimes a coronal mass ejection. And it's those coronal mass ejections that sometimes lead to aurora. So you might be able to see kind of in the makings here of some of the effects that we see on Earth in real time, which is kind of cool. Let's back out a little bit. I'm real bummed about these conditions, guys, but still cool that we're able to see it flare. So right before I shot this, I can actually show you how different it looked just like a little bit earlier. We're not there yet, but basically I was shooting a full disk of the sun to just create like a mosaic of the sun before the conditions turned on me. And when I shot this area, it looked very different. It wasn't this bright. It was kind of muted. And I was like, I guess maybe it's not going to go today, whatever. And then it did this. So obviously, it's very difficult to predict what the sun's going to do. All right, I'll check out some questions. Sorry, I've been kind of nerding out at this and haven't been paying attention to you guys. Um, Ooh, great comment. Earth is not flat. You're right. It's not flat. How big is that flare compared to the Earth? Okay. Let me eyeball this. I'm just eyeballing it, but I would say like this. So this, if you look at this V here, I would say the left side of the V is probably like 2 Earths tall, and maybe this is like 3 Earths long going off to the right. So that's just like a guesstimate, but that's probably about right. Um, Man, these conditions are bad. Oh man, of course this happens right when it's flaring. Hopefully it steadies up a little bit. But with the amount of heat, that just happens down here in Arizona, it's just you get so many heat waves, just really distorting things. Very hard to work during the day sometimes. That's why I pack it in usually by like 10:30. Um, hey Vincent, welcome. Yeah, so the solar flare is kind of still happening. I'm still seeing this crack here. It was brighter a minute ago, so that's how bright it is right now. So this is completely unstretched, and you can see right here in these cracks, it's still actually clipping my sensor. So we're still seeing kind of that tail end of that flare. So I'm gonna watch and see if it actually releases something. But the way my telescope is tuned right now, I don't know if I'll be able to see any material pop off of it. I'm kind of thinking I probably won't. But yeah, this is a flare in action basically, or at least the tail end of one. And yeah, the wiggling is from air motion. So great question. Yeah, this isn't like this. The wiggles you're saying, that's not the sun doing that. It's our atmosphere causing some refraction in the air on the way of the light getting into my telescope, which makes it wiggle. Um, so, um, so yeah, somebody's saying, is the sun been having more flares recently, or have I just been seeing more stuff about it? Probably a little bit of each. If you follow me, you're going to see more stuff about it just because I've been shooting it every day since I've been home. So yeah, you're gonna see more about it just by following me. But also, it kind of made the news. Of course, all this aurora happening. So a lot of scientific journals are taking more of an interest in the sun right now because it's what people are interested in reading about because they're finally seeing kind of that effect on their life. If you go outside and the sky's dancing for you. So the space weather has been just a topic of interest lately. But the sun's always doing interesting things, but it is at a peak of activity right now. There's like this 11-year cycle where the sun has periods of slow activity, periods of heightened activity. Right now, we're in a period of heightened activity. So when I first got into solar astronomy, like 4 years ago ish, the sun was like completely empty. Like there was nothing on it except for like the spicules. You'd get this occasional small sunspot, the occasional prominence, and that was it. We didn't get these like huge active regions like we're getting now. So this is kind of like the solar astronomy Super Bowl, where it's kind of all the prep kind of leading up to these times when the sun's very active. You're asking me if the colors are real. Well, so if you're looking at this live stream here, oh, there goes a bird. If you're looking at this live stream, you'll see that it's monochrome. And that's because the nature of the filters I have to use to capture these, I need monochrome filters. Yeah, otherwise, there's too much interference in the filters, and it actually eliminates a lot of the details you're seeing here. So I can't use color cameras. Um, Man, this thing's still kind of going. Cool. Um, Now, this light is actually red. Like if this was a color camera, it'd be seeing red right now. But because it's monochrome, of course, I'm not. But that color is really easy to add back in and processing. So this is the only time I do this with any of my photos, but with solar photos, the color is always added artificially. All the space stuff, all the other space stuff, is not. It's real. Space is very colorful, and I hate the misconception that it's not. Um, but yeah, definitely with these solar photos, I have to add the color in, and it's just the nature of these filters. Um, yes, this is active region 3697, which was redubbed from 3664, I think was what it used to be called when. But yeah, it's the same exact active region that caused all those aurora a few weeks ago. Same one. Um, what caused it was it emitted a ton of coronal mass ejections pointed right at us. So I'm watching it, kind of hoping it does that again. And I'm actually looking right here. So there's like kind of this wave of material that I didn't notice earlier. That might actually be a coronal mass ejection. Uh, so I'm watching it. But if you see anything that's kind of moved from minute to minute, you see things kind of like moving out a little bit. Um, those things might actually be launching towards us. Um, and by the way, that I'm not. This isn't like a fear mongering thing. Like this is not a dangerous thing. This is not launching, materials that's going to harm us or knock satellites out, knock out the power grid. This is just the sun doing sun things like it always does. I'm just showing you up close. Um, this is always happening, and you just probably don't usually know about it. So yeah, don't go buy toilet paper or whatever you're going to do. um, Well, yeah, really interesting the way it seems to follow these cracks here. But it's definitely not as bright. So there was this bright spot over here when I first started streaming, and that's kind of died down. So, but this part over here is now getting brighter. That wasn't as bright earlier. So I don't know if maybe it's gonna pop off in a few different ways, or I don't know. We'll see. We'll just keep watching it and see what happens. And I'm gonna check my memory. I ran out of memory actually earlier, but I deleted a ton of stuff so I could watch this. Um, I am reading chat on YouTube. I've got like the StreamYard, which shows comments from Twitter or X and YouTube. And then I've also got a window with my Instagram live going where I can read my Instagram comments. So I am reading, I think, all the comments. I don't think Facebook comments show up on here. So if you're commenting on Facebook, I'm sorry, but I just don't see it. I'm not about to have a fourth window open because I have two stream windows open, and of course my capture window is where I'm watching this active region. So yeah, I can't see all the comments, unfortunately, guys. I wonder how it looks reversed. So I changed the tuning of my telescope, and I don't think I like the way it looks reversed as much. It doesn't look as furry. But, but this tuning was better for the sharpness that I wanted. So right now it would be even blurrier if I didn't change it. So this is being streamed on Facebook at Cosmic Background Studios, YouTube also at Cosmic Background Studios, and then my Instagram, obviously Cosmic_Background, where most of you are, and then on X at A James McCarthy. X is probably the best way to stream it, just because I have a what was I going to say? My comments are open right here, and it's actually like you can open up on a desktop and it's all big. So man, still going. So over here on the histogram, you can see the flare in these lines that are like way out to the right. It would have stopped like here. This hump like would have stopped like right here if it wasn't flaring. Really interesting to see how it shows up in the data. A very bright flare, and you'll actually get signal clipping, so it's way out here, and you actually see that occasionally happen over here, depending on, I think, what the atmosphere is deciding to do. So this is completely unedited, raw image of the surface of the sun, or not surface, it's the chromosphere of the sun. I keep saying surface, even though like solar astronomers probably cringe when they hear that. There's not actually a surface to the sun, by the way, guys. I mean, it's just all plasma all the way down. So, if you let's say you were heat proof and jumped on the sun, you would just fall straight through. Um, I mean, you would turn to plasma and oh, there's actually something really interesting going on right here. So look at these lines. So this through here, you can kind of see these arcs. Those are getting brighter. So I believe that's you're seeing energy slip through the convection cells and light up those areas. I don't really know what's happening to cause that, but that's interesting and might mean something. And if you've been on here this whole time, so I don't know if you remember when I was talking about this V here, but it's noticeably changed shape in the last 5 minutes. Like it's looks a lot different than it did earlier. So obviously there's a lot of activity here, and over that 5 minutes, we're going to be seeing like things change dramatically. So this time lapse, when I put it all together, you'll be able to see things dancing and moving much more quickly than some of my past time lapses. Like frankly, my last couple time lapses were pretty boring. Like there wasn't a lot of stuff happening. You see, like the plasma jets kind of dance around a little bit, but they're not like big structural changes in these objects. It takes something like this cataclysmic event to really change the shapes of these things, at least change the shape from quickly. Yeah, exactly. The left leg of the V just died. What's the size of the area we're looking at? If I had to guess, and I haven't measured, but there's a way to measure this, but I would say my entire field of view here is probably 200,000 miles across, roughly. It might be a little less than that. It might be a little more than that. I'm just kind of visualizing because the sun is about 800,000 miles wide, and I know I'm maybe looking at about a quarter of the field of view of the sun. I could probably measure. I probably should because I do this so often. And because of that measurement, I know that Earth is probably like the size of the spot. So you can kind of eyeball things a little bit and get a rough idea how big things are, plus or minus about 20%, just knowing that. So just eyeballing it, you know, this is probably 2 Earths tall. This is probably 3 Earths long. This is probably like 8 Earths long. There's this stuff is just huge, and it's very, very hard to wrap your head around exactly how huge it is. Because what's crazy is it's actually moving like very fast, like almost relativistic speeds. But because it's so massive, it almost looks like it's stationary. But these like this energy is kind of shifted. It shifted from down here to up here, and that happened at like hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. But it's just covering such a huge distance that it takes it a couple minutes. Although, I mean, this is actually changing really, really fast. Like it's changing before my very eyes, which is like just like never happens when I'm time lapsing the sun. It just this change happened so fast right here. Um, so really cool stuff. But I love how it's really kind of guiding these cracks in the sun. They're not actually cracks, but they kind of look like them in the image. All right, I'll get to some questions here. All right, so what type of telescope I use? I kind of talk about this a lot, and I actually have a thread about telescopes I use at the bottom of my highlights on X and pinned to my highlights on Instagram. But this telescope is called an AR-127. It's a 5-inch refractor telescope made by Explore Scientific. It is not designed to look at the sun. It's just been modified to do it. And the modification is I added something called an energy rejection filter, which is like a little filter that rejects infrared and ultraviolet light that I don't need. And behind that is something called an etalon. And that Etalon is made by Daystar Chromosphere, and it allows only the hydrogen alpha light to enter the camera. Within that Etalon, that Daystar Chromosphere, it's got a blocking filter, and it also increases the magnification by about 4x. And all of these things make it safe to either use your eye or a camera to observe these things. If you don't have these things, do not attempt to do this, because you will destroy a camera in the base case scenario, and you'll blind yourself, worst case scenario, or burn down a neighborhood or something. It's just that the sun. You do not want to mess with the sun's energy if you don't know what you're doing. So it took a lot of trial and error, mistakes, and research to get where I am doing this. And yes, I have made mistakes. I've burned things. I've nearly looked at the sun unfiltered through a telescope before, because I was just moving quickly and forgot that I took the filter off my finder scope. And it was only because I got near it and felt the heat on the side of my face. I didn't actually look through the finder scope. So it's like, you can't move too fast. You got to do the research. Even professionals make mistakes that are very costly. So just don't mess with it. Wow. So remember how I was pointing out the histogram earlier? So look at how much further to the right everything's dancing over here. That tells me this spot has gotten much brighter. So much that it's actually clipping my camera sensor. So this is completely unedited. There's no stretching going on to the image to brighten it artificially. It's just that bright through the filter. So yeah, this is a very bright region of the sun, very high energy. It's not particularly large, but I don't know what classification CME this is. I can't eyeball that. I imagine it is an X class, because it's got legs on it, and I saw a screenshot from SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory, and it looked bright enough to be an X class. All right, back to questions. Sorry, I go off on these tangents, guys. I get really excited, start nerding out. I do look at YouTube comments. There's just a lot of comments coming in on multiple channels, so it's just hard to stay on top of things. So the side of my screen over here is just like a control panel. It's how I adjust the camera settings. There's exposure controls, there's field of view controls. I have a very tight field of view going on right now. This is the bit depth I'm capturing. I went with 8-bit bit depth to keep the file size down. Usually I do 16, but I was worried about running out of memory. I throttle my frame rate here also to control memory. This is where I would do calibration frames. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to shoot calibration frames, so this is completely uncalibrated. This is where I control my telescope. I slew it around, so you can see that as I kind of touch these buttons, the telescope moves a little bit. And then this is the histogram, which is basically a chart of the reading of the camera sensor. So if there's there's values here on the left, those are darker values. Values here on the right are brighter values. And the higher the line, the more values, or sorry, the more data within that range of values. So gray, the middle gray color, is the highest, which makes sense because you just look at this and it's basically all gray when you don't edit it. So clicking this button right here increases the contrast just automatically. It's called a stretch in astrophotography. Basically, what it does is it brings the black value up to the lowest value in the sensor, readable by the sensor, and then it brings the bright value to the highest, the white value to the highest value, and that increases contrast just with the click of a button. Great question. That's from Felix from What About It. You mentioned the bright lines aren't actually cracks. Does this visible surface of the sun have any meaningful topography? If so, how tall or deep would the features be? So I'm looking at the chromosphere, which does actually have a depth to it. So these are spicules that you're seeing here, these lines. They're plasma jets, and each one of them is between 1,000 to 10,000 miles long. And for the most part, with the exception around these active regions where they get pulled by the magnetic field, they're usually pointed straight up. So there is a depth to them. Now, a lot of people refer to the photosphere as the surface of the sun. Whew, this thing's popping off. Look how bright it is. Sorry, I'm going to keep getting sidetracked. But the photosphere really doesn't have any depth to it because of the nature of the convection cells. Much like a boiling pot of water doesn't have any depth to it. It's just you get this constant churning motion and everything kind of stays flat because of gravity. Um, so that's kind of the way that I interpret these things. Now, the individual convection cells will have a little bit of depth to them because they'll fall off around the cells. I don't know how that looks up close. I don't know like the depth to it. I'm sure there's solar astronomers that probably know, but overall the photosphere is extremely flat, very very flat, as flat as Earth. Just kidding. That was a joke. Somebody's gonna quote me. I know. I'm gonna see that on meme now. Um, But yeah, this it's still popping off, guys. It's gotten brighter since I've been looking at it, so it's still going. It's so bright, it's blowing out my sensor right there. So I'm actually losing data as I look at this. Um, and again, man, these conditions, wow. That's what it's like living in Arizona, guys. Yeah, you can definitely see it changing. I mean, this has changed dramatically just since I started the live stream. So changing very dramatically. So it's really fun. I get to do this with you guys and share these moments with you because, there's moments like this that happen a lot while I'm, doing this astrophotography where just something really cool happens. I'm like, wow, look at this. And that excitement is kind of just contained to me. But, when I get to share it all with you, kind of, hopefully get some of you excited about this too. And, maybe I'll motivate some of you to buy your own telescope and then, go on and share these moments with other people. Um, but yeah, seeing something flare on the sun is just about one of the most exciting things you can see as a solar astronomer. Just because it's fairly static otherwise. So yeah, this bright thing right here, that's a flare, and it's still going. Um, I'm reading through comments, guys, when I get quiet. So, and I apologize if I haven't answered your question. There's kind of a lot of them, and I'm kind of also distracted watching this the whole time too. Um, I've been staring at the screen so long, my back's getting sore. Yeah, I might stream on Twitch, by the way. People have told me that before, and I just don't stream enough to like bother setting up a whole nother platform. But if I do this more regularly, then yeah, I'll absolutely stream on Twitch because you're right, there's a audience for it there. Wow. So this is changing ridiculously fast. So this piece right here is pushing to the left. So watch it. Watch this piece grow here to the left. And actually, this part up here is changing very quickly too. This grew over the last couple minutes. So we got a couple areas kind of to watch and see them change. So this is unedited. There's no adjusting done to it, and you can just see how bright these areas are relative to the rest of the sun. Very very bright. And sorry guys if it's very confusing when I keep clicking on this to like increase contrast. But this is unedited basically, and this is with a very huge contrast adjustment applied to it. So looking at it completely unedited helps me see where it's actually flaring versus where I just increased contrast so much it blew out the features. Um, and yeah, it's still going. So it's changing very rapidly. So these things moving are moving at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour, which is pretty wild to see. What is the composition of the flares? Great question. It's incandescent hydrogen plasma. So you have hydrogen that's superheated to the point of incandescence, and then it ionizes into the hydrogen alpha spectrum. It's where it kicks off an ion, or I don't know. Some physics nerd can probably answer that better than I can. But the the molecular structure of the hydrogen changes with superheat when it becomes a plasma, and it also is when it becomes magnetic or affected by magnetic fields, which is why this hydrogen conforms the magnetic field lines of the sun, and why you can actually see the magnetic field lines at all in the sun, because it's plasma. Um, Will the northern lights go crazy because of these? I'm assuming that's the missing word was lights. So that is like super hard to predict. When we know more when we can see, like, actually measure like the actual particles coming our way. Because right now, yeah, it's flaring, but I can't see any kind of like coronal mass ejection, and if that coronal mass ejection is pointed towards Earth or not. And that's where you get those those high energy particles interacting with our magnetic field, being guided towards the poles, and the amount of energy determines like how far south they go, etc. I'm not an aurora expert in any ways. It's just my understanding of how they work. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to look at this and go, oh, keep an eye out for aurora. And if I did say that, or if somebody else says that, they're full of it. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, is an aurora more likely because something's flaring? Then yeah, absolutely, it's more likely. But I can't say definitively, you know, what's happening, because I don't know for sure if the coronal mass ejection is happening. So this, hold on, look at this, guys. This is getting really bright right here. I mean, that just started. So this is kind of another little spot is flaring right now, and it's moving quickly. Yeah, this is going to be a really cool time lapse. I'm going to just check my memory really quick and make sure I don't run out of storage. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'll probably go in and delete some deep sky data or something if I need to. So I'm getting moments of good seeing conditions. The seeing conditions are actually stabilizing a little bit, which is nice. It's not just like a consistent blur. Of course, as I say that, it gets blurry. But wow, look at how fast that changed, guys. Amazing. So we're just kind of watching it all unfold right now. I'm so glad this is happening during a live stream. By the way, I think the aurora is more likely tonight, by the way. I see, because I think last night it wasn't supposed to be a huge, like tons of aurora, but I think there's some in the forecast for tonight. It's always just a best guess. Well, it's like predicting the weather. But it's not like it's going to be like visible in Miami again. That's like a once in a generation thing. Like, you're not going to see that again, most likely. It could happen. I don't want to say never, but it's like, I mean, that's pretty rare. I mean, when that type of thing happens, it ends up in history books. I remember reading about it like when I was a kid. I remember reading something. It was like there was a solar storm in the 80s where, the aurora was visible as far south as Mexico or something. And I was like, my mind was blown because the northern lights look so cool. And I was like, oh, I hope that happens again. And then lo and behold, we lived through it. So it does happen, just, on a very rare basis. So Tangled Up in Blue just commented with a link. It looks like X 1.4 flare. So I guess that's the flare that we've been observing here. Really cool. Still going through comments, guys. People have been asking me a lot about the Parade of Planets on June 3rd. Just know that my take on it is it's actually a pretty lame event. I think it's just been kind of a slow news cycle for science writers. Like, if you went out that morning, right before sunrise, and you look east, there's like 6 planets in the sky, but only 2 of them are actually visible. You can see Saturn and Mars, and they're not even particularly close together. They're like, Saturn will be like here, and Mars will be like here, and then the moon will be like over here. And then kind of lost in the glare of the sun, you have Jupiter. And then you have Uranus and Neptune that are also kind of in that line, but they're not even visible if you don't have a telescope. So what's the point? Oh, and Mercury will be there by Jupiter. Also won't be visible because it'll be lost in the glare of the sun. So it's honestly a really lame event, guys. I thought about getting up and like, shooting something. I'm like, man, I'm gonna deprive myself of all this sleep like right before I'm going to Texas to shoot Starship. And I'm like, I don't think I want to shoot it. I might do it. I might just suck it up, but I honestly think it's a pretty lame event. It's not at all like what you see in the renders where it's like they show like this dramatic portrait of like all the planets all lined up super nice. It does not look like that. I kind of hate that they do that because then people will ignore the events that are actually really cool. Because there are events that are fantastic and worth the hype. This is, in my opinion, is not one of them. Do you like the high contrast view or the low contrast view, by the way? I've been sticking with the low contrast view because it helps me see it change. I mean, it is changing so fast, guys. I mean, this is already kind of working its way down here. And I'm watching the histogram change. It's pushing very far right now. Yeah, really excited to see how this time lapse looks. All right, you guys see that shake that just happened? I bet that was a bird landing on my telescope. That happens a lot. The birds see this thing sticking out of my observatory and go, oh, that's a good place to land and poop. Um, Somebody asked if this is a time delay or live. This is as live as it gets. There's, of course, a slight delay when photons leave the sun versus when they arrive on Earth, which is about 8 minutes. But otherwise, yeah, you're looking at this in real time. Other than, of course, the lag on the stream, which I'm sure is like a few seconds. What's the temperature there in your city? Dude, it's got to be over 100 degrees. It's hot. Very, very hot. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, let me clarify. It's not like apocalyptic 100 degrees Celsius. Um, but it's 12:30 right now. Yeah, it's probably over 100 degrees. Hey Jeff, he said something flew across your screen around 12:20 on your computer time. If you want to go back and check it out, so that happens like all the time. It's either bugs or birds, like every single time. Um, I hope a UFO doesn't cross through here because if it was an alien or something, I'd miss it because I would just assume it was another bug or a bird, because that just happens so often. Somebody asked, what sunspot am I observing at the moment? So it's active region 3697, which used to be 3664, which is the one that caused all the aurora a couple weeks ago. It just went behind the sun, came back around, so it got a new name, which is tradition. This it's the appropriate thing to call it is actually an active region. I don't like saying that when I'm making posts on social media because a lot of people just go, what the heck's an active region, and keep scrolling. But sunspot, it's like everybody's like, okay, I know sunspot. A sunspot is a symptom of an active region, much like a flare is a symptom of an active region. So that's why these things are cataloged based on active region. And the active region will spawn one sunspot or 10 sunspots, and it just kind of all stays within that same grouping of heightened magnetic field activity. So yeah, it's the word sunspot's kind of used interchangeably with active region, but that's not really the most accurate way to say that. So since this is kind of a long form thing, I will give you that explanation so you know moving forward kind of what that means. Because a lot of people say, oh, it's this one sunspot. But if you look at it, it's actually like a ton of sunspots within one active region. So that's why they're cataloged the way they are. Someone's asking me if I'm not feeling hot because I'm with the telescope. So I'm inside with the air conditioning. I'm in my office. The telescope is outside, of course, in a separate structure that I built, and I'm remoting into it right now. I just used Google Remote Desktop and just logged into it. So really cool the way this kind of just completely changed its shape while we were watching it, guys. I mean, it looks completely different than it did when I started. Um, Low contrast view, high contrast view. Um, I mean, you got all this over here lit up now that wasn't lit up when I started. This thing completely changed shape. Um, this thing kind of pushed off upward. And I don't know what's going on here. But what was cool is we were able to, I don't know if you remember earlier in the stream, guys, but we were kind of able to predict this one going because we were looking at it and said, hey, doesn't that look a little brighter than it was? And then as we watched it, lo and behold, it did in fact flare. So, yeah, that's, I guess sometimes we're able to predict on a very, very short term, like 1 minute in advance. I'm not going to be able to watch this forever because I am going to run out of memory at some point, but I'm still doing decent for now. I'm actually worried that my telescope is going to hit the pier. So I'm actually going to look at, I have a webcam on it. So I'm going to check that webcam right now and see how it looks. Oh, oops, that's the wrong one. So I'll try to show this to you. Oh, wait, give me a second here. It's gonna give me. So that is my webcam on my solar telescope. You've probably seen it in my videos where I usually just do like a quick like B-roll cut to the solar telescope before I get into the time lapse or whatever. Um, and it's like pretty much vertical right now. So if it keeps going, the bottom of it will strike the pier that's holding up the mount. So that means I'd have to go out there, physically flip the whole thing around, adjust the position of my roof so that the telescope has room, and then keep shooting. So it'll be like a several minute interruption on this. I doubt I will do that because honestly, there's no way this lasts that long. So I'll probably keep going on this for another 20 minutes maybe, and then we'll call it quits. Bray wants me to take my hydrogen alpha filter off my telescope. So guys, if you were on the stream earlier, you know what happens if I do that, right? Does anyone want to educate Bray on what happens if you take a filter off a solar telescope while it's pointed at the sun? If the answer is you get superhuman vision, that's correct. By superhuman, I mean like Daredevil, not like Cyclops or like Superman. In case you didn't get that joke, that's because Daredevil is blind. I was reading the Instagram chat when I said that, but I am reading YouTube, X, and Instagram chats. I don't think everything on X gets through because I think there's like people will reply to the stream like as a post, and then they'll like click into the stream and then comment. So it's like I don't know. There's a few ways people comment, and I don't see all of them, but I see most of them. Uh, Doug Allen Music, yes, left, right, east, west is flipped. It will be corrected after the meridian flip, if I even do it. If you're just joining the stream, we are looking at an active region that just flared. And it's still like doing stuff. It's still like super bright through here, so it might go again. We'll keep watching it and see what happens. And I think this whole thing was kind of just one event. It was like a flare, and then you kind of got the like I don't know, like the aftershocks, if you want to call it that, from the flare. So we missed like the brightest like initial part of it. But since I jumped on, we were able to see like kind of what happened and how this entire active region, or yeah, the entire active region changed as a result of the flare. Angels on X said the flare is at the M7.12 right now. So I thank you for that update. I'm not going to fact check that, but I'm assuming you're right. Somebody's asking what's the best way to stay informed on when CMEs are earthbound. So it takes basically an analysis of the SDO data, that's the Solar Dynamics Observatory. They're looking at the solar corona, and when a flare, like a powerful flare, is like pointed right at Earth or a coronal mass, and it produces a coronal mass ejection, you get this like basically like a ring of material explodes out of the sun, and it was like a bullseye to Earth when it does that. And there's like all kinds of people that just analyze that data and share it. So I would just follow like science accounts, astronomer accounts, because they'll be talking about it. You'll get that information way faster than like because otherwise you just have to like manually go check. Um, you can go to like spaceweather.com and they always have like up to dates on the latest flares and stuff, but you'd have to like manually go check that. Somebody probably has better suggestions too, because I'm looking at this stuff, so to me it's like I'm going to be checking it anyway, so I'm not necessarily the best person to know how to keep in touch with that, because I just alert myself. I'm like, oh hey, the sun's flaring. It's still pretty bright right here. I mean, it's faded a little bit, so it might be done. Might be. But man, this whole area just looks so much different than it did. Yes, that the solar features are changing very fast right now, but only because of this flare. I've been time lapsing this thing for like a week now, and there was a couple days where it was pretty exciting, but otherwise it's been pretty boring, honestly, pretty consistent. Today it's going to be like crazy. It's going to be like, one of the most interesting ones I've ever seen. So, yeah, pretty exciting. Exciting stuff. I'm reading comments, guys, if you're wondering why I'm quiet. Somebody's asking when will this be likely to hit Earth? I don't even know if it made a coronal mass ejection yet. So it's the coronal mass ejections that hit Earth. So you don't want to like jump to those conclusions that like, oh, because because it flared, now particles are going to hit Earth. Like, because that's not really the way it works. It's the flare has to also produce a coronal mass ejection, and then that coronal mass ejection would have to be Earth facing for it to hit Earth. So yeah. All right, now I'm reading the comments on X that are not like in the live, but just under my post. So, um, oh, that's cool. Tom Bickmore commented his class is watching this live instead of playing KSP together. That is awesome. So you're getting a live look at the sun instead of playing video games. Now, as far as video games go, KSP is like one of like the elite video games if you want like a science education because it actually teaches orbital mechanics better than any textbook. But I don't know. You can't beat watching a solar flare. I mean, you're literally watching a fusion bomb, basically. If a fusion bomb was going off in the distance, you'd probably turn your head to look at it, right? You probably shouldn't. You'd probably blind yourself. But that's basically what we're looking at. And again, guys, this isn't something that's dangerous. It's perfectly safe. It's not going to hurt Earth. It's just the sun doing normal sun things. So don't go be like Andrew said the world was ending. No, that's not what's happening. The sun is doing normal sun things. It's just more active right now because of where it is in the solar cycle. And yeah. Oppenheimer Part 2. That's funny. How big is this spot compared to Earth right now? So I would say Earth is like the size of this kind of dark circle right here. I don't know how well that's coming through with the compression here. Maybe a little smaller than that. So yeah, Earth would fit across this screen like 20 to 25 times. So just give you an idea of the scale. One of these days I'll just measure my field of view and know exactly what it is. But just eyeballing it, that's about what it is. So like this thing right here, like this, like if this made an imaginary circle, would be about the size of Jupiter. And we know Jupiter is 10 Earths wide. Maybe a little smaller than Jupiter. Maybe Jupiter's more like that. Yeah, I'm sorry if you guys were scared when I was like, flare, all dramatic with my live stream, but it's not a dangerous thing. It's just exciting. And as I have to resist the temptation to capitalize on clickbait fear clicks, like all the science journalists do. An asteroid is gonna just nearly miss Earth, and it's like, a million miles away. So they all do it, and it's always just so cringe because if you know anything about this stuff, you know that that's not what's actually happening. Um, all right, guys, I will be right back. I have to go check on my gear because I think it's very close to impacting. I'll be right back. We're good. So, did you guys behave while I was gone? Don't judge me for still wearing pajama pants. I basically woke up and immediately got to this. No, the sun was not going to impact my gear, my telescope. Sorry. Did I actually say that? Like, my wires get crossed in my brain so easily when I'm looking at this kind of thing that I say dumb stuff sometimes, and you guys have to correct me. Um, but yeah, I think it's done being a bright flare. It's now just, I think this is just going to work its way through this active region, and that'll be it. Um, It's 12:45 here, by the way, guys. I've been streaming for about 55 minutes. So right in the middle of the heat of the day here, which is why the conditions look so bad, and you're seeing all these heat waves. Um, let's see what else we got. See if we got any good questions here. No, I am not going to move to Alaska. I'm sorry. I love Alaska. I was just in Alaska chasing aurora, and it was so pretty. I just loved it. It was beautiful. It was everything great. The problem is, at very high latitudes, you're at a disadvantage for astrophotography because the core of the galaxy actually sits below the ecliptic plane. And the core of the galaxy is where basically the most interesting things are happening because you're looking through more stars, more dust, more everything. So there's more nebula. Um, so Alaska, as far as that goes, you're able to shoot like maybe 20% less of the sky because of that latitude over where I live, which is the more southern latitude. Oh yeah, that's well 20 degrees. That's I don't know, maybe more like 10%. I don't know. But I would move to Alaska if I wasn't an astrophotographer because it's that pretty. It's gorgeous. Now South America, there's an idea. Yes, we are seeing the sun. Oh, hello, France. I love how we're verifying that Earth is a globe by people observing that the sun is over the horizon for them while it's straight up for me. I love it. Uh, hello, Vancouver. I was just there. I was just in Vancouver. It was a layover, though. And yes, the Milky Way does look much more prominent from the southern hemisphere because of where the galactic core sits. So the core of the galaxy sits kind of at a lower altitude. Like from my vantage, it doesn't get very high in the sky. In fact, from most of the United States, like the center of the galaxy is basically cut in half. You can only see one half of the galaxy. Um, and but if you're situated like right on the equator or below the equator, you start seeing that core of the galaxy goes right overhead. Really cool. How we doing on memory, guys? Okay, 90 gigabytes. Did you say I'm secretly a Sith? I'm openly a Sith. I got the dual lightsaber and everything. Uh, somebody just broke into my office. It was my dog. Usually I try to keep her out of here because she like eats random things off my floor. I always have like telescope parts on the floor and she'll just come in here and just like eat one of them. It's out of boredom. If you haven't seen my dog, she's the most adorable German Shepherd in the world. She's the best girl in the world. Oh gosh, guys, I mean, we're probably close to being done here, but we definitely saw huge change here. I mean, I guess this is still going right here. This whole area right here is still going, but I'm looking on the histogram over here and I'm seeing that line recede a lot. So that's telling me that the overall energy output by this thing is dropping. Oh, somebody's asking to see my dog. Of course, I gotta show her. Come here, Bailey. Come here. You're too big for this. I don't think she likes when I carry her like a baby. I love you. Oh, thank you. It was actually easier to move my dog than it was to move my webcam, even though she's like 80 pounds. She's the best. What's funny is I used to post about my dog a lot. I used to put her in like the stories of my Instagram and stuff a lot, and I would always get like unfollows for that. I'm like, who unfollows because somebody shared a picture of their dog? Now, if I was sharing pictures of babies all the time, I'd understand. Hey, get out of there. What are you doing? See, it's why I don't like her in here. She's the best company in the world, but she gets into stuff because she knows I have to pay attention to her if she starts eating one of my telescopes. Hello, India. Love to see people all over the world on these things. Man, it is the middle of the night for you in India. What time is it? Like 12:30 or something? 1 a.m.? I don't know. I never remember how it works. It's like 12 and a half hours off or something. I don't remember. I don't know. Sorry, no aliens, guys. It's just the sun doing cool stuff. My dog's settled down finally. She's just like asleep on the floor. So less stressed about her being in here now. She's just a big sweetie though. Uzbekistan, huh? That's pretty far away. We got Czech Republic in here. Abu Dhabi. Wow. All over the world. I love it. I was just in Abu Dhabi. It was also a layover. Um, I would love to actually check out Abu Dhabi because it seems really cool, but I was literally just in the airport. I got to hang out in the airport for a couple hours and then I left. England, love England, was just there as well. I went from Scotland from Edinburgh to London on a train. It was very beautiful. I really liked London. I didn't think I'd like London as much as I did. I was like, whatever, just another city, but it was beautiful. Great question from YouTube. Is the section we're looking at in the center of the sun or at the edge and therefore distorted? We're actually not too far from the edge. I don't know if you guys have been following my time lapses, but I'm kind of been showing this thing as it's rotated around facing us. We're probably about a quarter of the way from the leftmost edge of the sun, and this is flipped, so that would be on the right side from here. Uh, so yeah, it's like halfway between the center and the edge, I would say. We have somebody from Niger, Africa. Wow. So cool seeing people from all over the world. Cape Town, South Africa. What? I want to set up a telescope near South Africa. I want to set up in Namibia. Am I saying that right? I never know how to say that. There's a observatory out there, remote hosting facility, where I could put my telescopes and take advantage of the incredible skies you have. Just incredible skies out there. Hello, Bangkok. Wow. So is it early for you? Or is it late for you? You're either up early or up really late. So I travel the world, take pictures of the galaxy. Yes, basically. Um, I mean, I'm basically a backyard astrophotographer that has like hardcore ADHD, so it doesn't want to like miss an opportunity if something's going on the other side of the world. So I just like I'm like, ooh, rocket launch, go to Texas. Ooh, rocket launch, go to Florida. Like, and then there's events that happen very locally, like planetary occults and things. So I travel for those, and so yeah, it's just I traveled for the Aurora. I forgot about the Aurora, and that was the most recent one. Um, yeah, it's winding down a little bit, guys. We're kind of back to where we were kind of towards the beginning here. It could pop up again. It definitely might. But if I had to guess, I would say the show is very close to over. But we still got like kind of those aftershocks moving through here. Actually, as I said that, this got brighter. Hmm. Maybe it's not over yet. It's kind of cool how you can see the way this frames the active region, almost like a shock wave, because it's pushing the filaments outward. So I bet you see a little bit of that in the time lapse. Oh, hey, Mr. Jupiter. So this is not going to give me an aurora forecast. I would trust the data coming off SDO for that as they analyze the coronal mass ejections that are sent our way. And even then, it's just a guess. So yeah, I wouldn't. If I start saying, "Oh, this is guaranteed aurora," you just know I'm full of it because you can't really forecast those from looking at this exactly. I can tell you that the likelihood of aurora increases if there's a flare because that means there's likely to be a CME and then there's a chance that CME is earth facing and there's a chance it's strong enough to impact us at the right time to produce aurora. But it's like very like low probability that anything I say will be accurate. uh, But yeah, I will say that the chance of aurora is slightly higher because we witnessed a flare, because that's just kind of the nature of it. But I haven't really seen evidence of a CME. But to be fair, it's very difficult to see them from this angle. Really, you'll only see them once they like enter in the corona, which is why the SDO is used to track them. I would only see like a monstrous one. If there's a monstrous one, I could kind of see it, but so there's a bit of a Doppler shift that happens with these events where, so you guys all know what the Doppler effect is, where something's moving towards you, it blue shifts. If it's moving away from you, it red shifts. Well, because this is such a narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum I'm viewing, um, if it blue shifts or red shifts, it actually shifts out of the spectrum I'm seeing. So the coronal mass ejection, if launched this way towards us, it actually is invisible to my scope because I'm not seeing that bandpass. Um, if it launches sideways, I can see it, which is really weird. Um, but something else I could do is I could actually change the tuning of my scope as it moves towards me, and then it would come into view. So that's something I could do if I was out there with my telescope fiddling with it. But yeah, I can't do that now. But anyways, yeah, the coronal mass ejections are not really something I can look at from this angle. I can look for evidence of them, and depending on the size of it, I think I should be able to see something. But yeah, kind of an interesting nature of these filters. Oh, Lacey's in the chat. Stellar Arts, most amazing space painter. Everybody go follow Stellar Arts on Instagram. Actually, she's on X too. She was commenting on Instagram. Stellar, intentionally spelled Steller. Um, she did my favorite space painting of all time, which is of Jupiter. It's like multispectral art. It's incredible. I've been like counting the seconds until she scans that thing so I can buy it in print. Um, but just absolutely amazing artist based out of Tucson. So the sun is it was flaring. So we all got to see flares. It just not only was it flaring, but it noticeably changed shape while it was flaring. So we were able to watch a lot of solar activity, which is pretty rare to be able to see in real time. So kind of exciting. So over the last hour and 10 minutes, we saw this active region completely change. It's about 1 p.m. here in Arizona. About 1 p.m. So somebody's asking how guiding works here. If you guys haven't heard me talk about this before, I talk about it a lot, but people that want to get into astrophotography oftentimes think that the camera or the telescope is the most important, but it's not. It's actually the equatorial mount. So the equatorial mount is what keeps the object stable, because Earth, as we know, is rotating. It reverses that rotation, and in reversing that rotation, will keep whatever you're looking at stable. I have this big monster refractor telescope on this mount, and it's able to precisely track the sun because it's got a motor in there that's always tracking it. So, um, if you're curious why I'm able to do this at all, that's why. But yeah, the equatorial mount. It's a German equatorial mount called an EQ6R Pro, is what I'm using. It's a pretty good one for beginners that want to get into astrophotography. But getting a massive mount for a relatively smaller telescope is much better than the other way around, which is why I recommend people that get into this don't buy like kind of like this pre-packaged telescope plus mount. You got to kind of buy them separately, because you always want to have a bigger mount than your telescope needs, not the other way around. Hey, New Zealand! I hope I get to visit you in New Zealand. When I say visit you, I mean your country, not you personally. I don't know you. But New Zealand has incredible skies, and the people are amazing. When I did sales, I used to work with New Zealand people a lot, and they were awesome. Love your accent. There's something about it. It's like a more charming British accent, or maybe like a more posh Australian accent. I don't know. It's just very. I love the accent. Y'all probably hate my accent, but that's okay. It's so funny how we see other accents. Like I always think of people with other accents always makes them sound more intelligent, and like American accents make people sound dumber. Yeah, you do not need a guide scope for the sun at this focal length, but it would help. There's ways to guide the sun that's more precisely tracking. I don't use it because usually I'm doing mosaics. Right now, I happen to be doing a time lapse. It would help for the time lapse. So I don't want to get into how much all my equipment costs because basically I have no idea. I'd have to sit here and add it up. But I always recommend most people start small because this is such a like it's such an investment of your time and energy to learn how to do this and do it properly that so many people just spend thousands and thousands of dollars, like just so much money. I've helped people just spend tens, 20s, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then they quit. They quit because it's such an investment to learn how to do this. There's a huge learning curve with astrophotography. Meanwhile, if you just have like a point and shoot DSLR and like a $20 tripod, you can take Milky Way photos that feature nebula and galaxies, and do that with like a couple $100 USD. Um, just it doesn't take much to open the door into astrophotography. So I recommend getting a taste for it and seeing how you like it. see if it becomes an addiction, see if you're finding yourself wanting to do it more. And then that's when you start investing in more equipment. And I actually do get into that a lot in my threads about this stuff. I'm kind of like, start small, see if you like it before dumping a ton of money into a system. If you want to get into photography, just get a used DSLR. If you want to get into astronomy, like visual astronomy with a telescope, get an 8-inch Dobsonian. 8-inch Dobsonians are like $500, and they'll show you galaxies, nebulas, planets, everything. You need a solar filter to see the sun, and it'll never look like this. It won't show you the chromosphere; it'll show you the photosphere. But you can do those things. Just do it safely. I'm not going to capture the lunar occultation of Saturn because it's too far away from me. It's happening the very southern tip of South America. It's visible, and I am not there. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to see it. Um, I will, however, be seeing one in September. I'm going to be traveling for that one. I could have traveled for this one too, but honestly, I have too much other travel going on. It was just exhausting, and yeah, no thanks. What else we got? Can I say Uzbek Sila? I don't know what that means, but sure, I said it. I hope it wasn't a curse word. Um, got Bahrain in here. What? So many cool places. Greetings, Germany. Uh, how closely am I zoomed in? So this, I'm looking at the field of view that's about, so if you're looking at the sun, it's about a quarter the width of the sun. So just to get an idea of it. And the thumb is like the size of the width of your thumb at arm's length ish. It's a half a degree wide in the sky. So this field of view is like 10 arc seconds ish, maybe like 8 arc seconds. Or sorry, arc minutes, not arc seconds. Sorry. Um, hope that helps. Or a view of like just 200,000 miles wide. So yeah, these like little like fur things that you see, I'll increase the contrast so you can see 'em better. But this fur is called spicules. Spicules. They're plasma jets. These are thousands of miles long, and they're just like a handful of pixels in these images. So this is really cool. Like, check this out on the right, guys. It looks like something split open right here. It's like just somebody like took the sun and like ripped it open. Oh, somebody's asking if I make a living doing this or if I have another job. So right now, this is my only job. I'm actually kept afloat just by people that subscribe to my Patreon and buy my prints. So thank you if you fall into one of those two camps. I mean, thank you anyway, just for like following me and engaging with my content. So I mean, that's huge right there. But yeah, the reason I'm able to do this, I'm able to like travel to get these shots and stuff, is because people buy my prints, subscribe to my Patreon. So yeah, if you got $5 extra to kick around, join my Patreon. It's A James McCarthy. It's the same as my X handle. Or heck, you can subscribe on like X or Instagram or something. I think that's like $5 too. Um, but the thing is, Patreon specifically, I encourage people to go to because that's where I can post my work in full resolution. So I don't know if you've ever seen like any of my moon or sun photos, but those photos are generally like in the hundreds of megapixels. Like they're massive. Because you can see how close up I can get, and then I stitch together the entire thing as like this big mosaic, and then you can download it, use it as a device wallpaper, zoom in really close, and see all the details. But anyway, they're not bad for $5, right? But it's people doing that. That's the reason I'm able to do this instead of like go work a day job. Um, I really hope I never have to go work a day job again because I love this. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And honestly, the fact that I'm able to share it with the world, I think, does a service. because I'm able to introduce a lot of you to what's possible with amateur astrophotography, which it'd just be a shame if I couldn't do it. Elon Musk actually doesn't get any of the subscription money, by the way. 100% of that goes to the creator. Now, if you subscribe on X via your iPhone, a percentage of it goes to Apple. But if you subscribe on on your desktop, 100% of it does go to the creator. So you pledge $5, I get $5. So fun fact. Now, if you subscribe on Patreon, they get a cut of that. So the best way to make sure that all the money is going to the creator is always subscribing on X, so long as you do it from the desktop. Otherwise, Apple gets a slice. But yeah, Elon doesn't make anything. He doesn't make anything off subscriptions. I mean, other than the fact that I guess people that subscribe are probably just more engaged, so they probably see more ads. So like indirectly, he probably gets it, but he doesn't take any money out of it. Somehow, I think Elon will get by without a percentage of my $5. Yep, the Y completely disappeared. If you guys are here at the start of the stream, remember I was like pointing out the very bright like V shape that kind of evolved into like a check mark and then it broke up. All that's left of it is this little squiggle right here. So that thing just completely annihilated. That was over the course of an hour that we saw it annihilated. But in the time lapse, it'll go by very fast. So it'll be very dramatic in the time lapse. Guys, got any questions? I haven't seen any good questions in a while. And sorry, I didn't mean to insult somebody. If you asked a question, I didn't answer it. Oh, cool. I inspired you to get a starter telescope for Christmas. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, it makes me so happy because looking through my dad's telescope when I was like a little kid, I was tiny. I was like 7 or 8 or something. But like I had those memories as an adult. So like obviously like it stuck with me and probably played a huge role in me getting into what I'm doing today. Um, so by the way, if you have a telescope, something that I ask of you, and I ask everybody to do it, get as many people to look through it as you can. So something I do every Halloween, for example, is I put my telescope on the sidewalk because there's just tons of kids walking by. And I'm like, hey, want to look at Saturn? And as they walk by, they'll peep at Saturn, and then like their mind is like melted. They're like, oh my god, like how is that real? So like you have the opportunity to forever change somebody's life for the better just by giving them a quick peek through your telescope. So do it. A very low, like obviously only if you're in a safe area, like take make a smart decision. But if you can, do it safely, definitely recommend spread the love, man. We need more people spreading the love. Inspire your daughter to get a telescope for her 9th birthday. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure she will treasure that telescope. And I don't know what her situation is, but a lot of kids have phones these days. With cameras on them, and you could totally get some basic photos just using a cell phone and a basic telescope. Um, Actually, I think Mr. Jupiter, you're doing that. You're doing great work. Just with your cell phone and a telescope. Um, so kudos to people that don't have the level of equipment that I have that are still plugging through and doing this every night because you can do it with very basic equipment. And don't stress about it if you can't afford a telescope. Your time will come. If you've got a goal like owning a telescope, it's just something really nice to work for. It'll make it that much sweeter once you finally get one. There might be all kinds of life inside the sun, by the way. Have you guys ever read the book Project Hail Mary? It's by Andy Weir. He's the guy that wrote The Martian, that was made into the movie with Matt Damon. He's a great writer. My favorite science writer. He's just fantastic. But he wrote this story that's actually delves into a type of life that could be found on the sun. But it's a very compelling read. So it's actually going to become a movie soon with Ryan Gosling. So you can just hold out for that if you're not a reader. I recommend reading the book though. I think it's a beautifully fleshed out science fiction novel. And no, I do not contribute to any of NASA's citizen science programs. Frankly, I do kind of what interests me and what motivates me day to day. And what motivates me day to day is to make cool photos or cool time lapses. And that's what resonates with my audience. So I think I think I'm able to do more of a service to science by just doing what I'm doing now. So that's why I don't do a lot of things that my peers are doing. Like I have peers that are discovering things. Bray Falls was in here. That guy's just cranking out discoveries. He's finding all kinds of faint supernova remnants, all kinds of cool stuff. Doing a lot of real science. What I'm doing, I would say, is not science, but it contributes to science because I am introducing people to the wonderful worlds of astronomy, and I'm doing it at scale. So some of them then contribute to science. I think we're all kind of play our part, and there's no like wrong answers for how people contribute to this. Um, and I'm a little bit selfish. Like I want to do the things that interest me because I know that that keeps me going. Um, So guys, I don't know how closely you've been watching this, but it's been changing quite a lot. So these areas that looked like cracks before have widened. They've gotten fainter and widened. What does that mean? I have no idea. But they're still pretty bright. They're not as bright as the flares were, but these are high energy areas. I think what we're looking at here is exposed photosphere. So these flares happens, and usually the chromosphere is like very densely packed with spicules, these plasma jets, which act like dust on a light bulb. They're silhouetted against the photosphere. If they're cleared out of the way, the photosphere shines through. So I think that might be what we're looking at here. But I'll know for sure when I go through this data and I time lapse it, and you should actually be able to see these things clearing out, and like you'll see the photosphere exposed. So it should be really interesting in the time lapse. So watch for that when I post it. And by the way, guys, I don't know what's been going on with algorithms, but I noticed my stuff doesn't get the engagement that it used to. And some of that might be because my work's not as good as it used to be, or not as novel as it used to be. I've been putting out a lot of repetitive content. But if you want to make sure that you always see my stuff, you can turn on post notifications. You can, or just even like just engaging with the post will make sure that it always shows up in your feed. So, because if you're not seeing my stuff, like I've been time lapsing this thing every day for like a week, and I bet most of you haven't seen it because I think I looked at it and it was like it was something like 5% of my audience viewed it. Like, how is only 5% of my audience seeing my posts? It's because the algorithms. The algorithms are designed to push content to you that you like, and if you don't like solar time lapses, then it's not going to show them to you. But anyways, don't make me go on a monologue about how much I hate algorithms. By the way, if you don't like it when I'm ranting, you feel free to mute me. The sun looks pretty cool without my narration. Oh, thanks for joining my Patreon. And Patreon, by the way, is the best way to, sorry, not the best way to support me. I would say that's X, but the best way to enjoy my content because I supplement what I post on Instagram and Twitter and all these places with the high resolution version of that image on my Patreon. Only when applicable, because sometimes the resolution is not that great to begin with. But when I do my big projects, these big mosaics, I always post on my Patreon, and they're always in their full low compression, full resolution. So you're able to download them, use them as device wallpapers. Not intended for print, by the way, because some people ask me that. It's like, oh, hey, if I get your patron, can I then print out this image? That's not what it's for, and I can't allow it because it then competes with my print business, which I need to pay bills. So, um, but yeah, definitely go nuts as far as downloading it. Use as device wallpapers and stuff. They're really cool too. Like you can zoom way in on them. That kind of thing is like really what I'm passionate about. Is like getting the really high resolution stuff. So Shiver Me Tiver on Instagram asked, "Is the movement that I keep correcting for is it the sun rotating or is it the Earth rotating?" Really, it's just the mount drifting because the mount, in order to correct for Earth's rotation, it has to be aligned perfectly with Polaris, and I have a little bit of an error in that alignment, so that error causes drift. So that's what I'm correcting for. Thanks, Ryan Murray, for the kind words. Glad you're seeing my posts. Hey Baron, you saying that's not what our sun looks like. Can you elaborate, please? Because this is a live, unedited view of the sun, specifically the solar chromosphere. We've been watching it change throughout the live stream. So I'll post the time lapse tomorrow, most likely. If people ask about the time lapse, so it takes me some time. So if you guys were watching, it says capture sequence running. I've been capturing 400 frames at a time, 400 video frames, which then get run through some software and stacked. And that creates one frame of time lapse video. And then I have to repeat that process for every batch that I've captured. And I've captured 370 of those so far. So it's a 370 frame time lapse, which is, I don't want to do math right now. What is that? About 30, no, it's not 30 seconds of time. I don't know how much video that is. Don't make me do math right now. My brain is fried. Am I sure this is the sun? Yeah, I mean, I just pointed my telescope toward the big bright thing in the sky, and that's yeah, pretty sure. And yes, the sun is white. Correct. The sun is white. Well, rather, so let's actually be specific. The solar photosphere is white. The sun is very, very, very bright. 99.99% of that brightness comes from the solar photosphere that emits on all wavelengths roughly equally, which is why it looks white to our eyes. Our eyes actually evolved to be color balanced based on the color of the sun, which is why it's white. It was responsible for creating the visual spectrum that we have. Um, However, that's just one layer of the sun. It only shows the convection cells on the sun. I filter that out using my equipment, and that reveals the solar chromosphere, which is actually red. It's like this bright pink color. And some of you actually saw it with your naked eyes during that last eclipse, because during that last eclipse, if you were into the path of totality, you could see like a little pink triangle coming off of the limb of the moon, and that was a solar prominence, which is part of the solar chromosphere, and you could see it in that very vivid hydrogen alpha light. So yes, it was the chromosphere is red, and that's actually what we're looking at here is the chromosphere. It's being captured with a monochrome camera, which is why it's black and white, but it is in fact red. If I were to swap out the camera I'm using for a color camera, it would destroy all these features because it'd be too filtered by then, but it would be red. The sun is not 2 light years away, it's 8 light minutes away. So the sun is much closer than that. The nearest other star is like 2 light years away. It's like 2.1 light years away. Um, so, and no, I cannot get details of the surface of any other stars but this one, as this one's close enough for me to observe. About 93 million miles away. All right, I think I'm probably gonna have to call it quits, guys, because my telescope is about to impact my pier. I'm waiting for my webcam to update. The cell phone signal is very, very terrible. Ooh, yeah, it's getting close. So yeah, as I was explaining earlier, the telescope's on this mount, right? And it slews to follow the sun, and if it keeps going, the bottom of it will hit the pier that's holding it up. So then I have to flip it to the other side and then have it keep going. But that's when I do that, it kind of screws up the time lapse because I get this chunk of time missing, and then also the whole time lapse then gets flipped around and then has to get realigned, which isn't that big of a deal. But also this thing's kind of dead anyway, so I'm kind of thinking I should just quit. Somebody's asking, what are we watching? We're watching the aftermath of a solar flare that popped earlier. You can scroll backwards to the beginning of the live, and actually, if you just that's a fun exercise. Just go through and just kind of scroll back and forth, just scrub very fast through the video, and you'll see how this thing like evolved very quickly, which is going to be what the time lapse is. But the time lapse will just look a lot better than whatever you do in this live video to scrub through it. But it's kind of crazy how much this has evolved over the last hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. Wow, we've been streaming for a while. So I'm so glad we got to stream when some exciting activity happened because it was kind of depressing, jumping on here every single day and like we never got to see it flare. But this is exciting stuff. I mean, and it's still kind of going. I mean, it's definitely not as bright as it was, but it's still pretty bright. But we got an hour and 40 minutes worth of time lapse video, which means when you see this tomorrow, we post it tomorrow, you'll see how I sped up that hour and 40 minutes into like a few seconds. So this stuff, it obviously changes very slowly, but when you compress an hour and a half, you'll see tons of activity. Tons of activity. All right. So what do you think? Should I call it? Yeah, my scope is so close to the edge. Yeah, give it like another 5 minutes and it's gonna hit. Baron, I'm not too sure I understand your question. You're asking how the sun is bigger than the Earth and the Moon, but I mean, if you visualize the formation of a solar system, it makes sense that the sun would always be larger than the planets and everything. I mean, that's the only way it could be, because if the sun wasn't as big as it is, it wouldn't be the center of mass for the solar system. So the orbits of everything in the solar system would be too chaotic for the solar system to be what it is today. And Earth would have never come, humans would have never been formed. So we can literally only exist if the sun is a certain size. So I hope that answers your question. It was kind of a vague question, but how many FPS do you use in your time lapses? So I usually try to do 30. Well, the the social media platforms usually don't support more than 30 anyway. So what I do is I render them at 60. I sometimes interpolate them to kind of slow them down at 60 FPS, so it'll stay 60 FPS. But then when I render the video through my software, because I'll like clip it all together, kind of make it interesting with some panning and zooming, I then output that render at 30 FPS. Um, right now, my camera is capturing at 24 FPS roughly. I actually can't see because my webcam's in the way. 20, I think it says 27 right now, actually. I can't even see it. It's like my webcam is exactly in that spot. Baron, the sun is 110 times the diameter of Earth. So if you look at diameters, you can stretch Earth 110 times. I'm not going to fact check that number, but that sounds about right. 110 Earths laid end to end can fit there. However, because the sun is in 3 dimensions and so is the Earth, when you extrapolate down to 3 dimensions, you end up fitting a million. It's like 1.3 million Earths inside the sun. So yes, if you look at volume, the sun is over a million times larger than Earth. If you look at diameter, it's only 110 times the size of the Earth. When you're thinking in 3 dimensions, things change a lot. The real Ola, hopefully I said that right. Thank you so much for the kind words. If you're having trouble with a video on Instagram, follow me on X at A James McCarthy, and you'll see the video there. And it'll be much clearer than on Instagram. Instagram is not ideal for this type of streaming. So yeah, the live, I know it's like a landscape orientation of my desktop, and you're looking at it on your phone, and it's a portrait orientation. It's just not ideal. So yeah, go to X or go to YouTube. I'm Cosmic Background Studios on YouTube. But yeah, you can see my stream a few different ways and hopefully see it a little more clearly. Or you can just hold out for the time lapse because that's going to look way better. Yeah, conditions are getting pretty rough, guys. It's going to be a little soft. How is my peer doing? It hasn't impacted yet, but it's very close. You'll know when my scope impacts my peer because suddenly this will suddenly drift off. It'll just be gone. I'm sorry guys, I'm checking some notifications. I've been neglecting my emails and such. Um, yeah, I should probably actually do some other things with my life than just stream the sun all day. This is just too interesting to walk away from. But what do you say? What do you think, guys? Should I keep going? Is it interesting enough to get back on it after the flip? How long does a plasma ejection take to hit the Earth's magnetic field? A couple days, but it depends on the speed of the coronal mass ejection. They're not all exuded with the same energy. So we have instruments that can measure the particles, and then we get a kind of this ballpark estimate of when they'll hit. I'm actually seeing some magnetic loops right here. So you see these things, guys? These like little lines right here? Those are loops in the magnetic field, and the plasma arcs along them. So that'll look a little interesting in the time lapse. I don't know. It's kind of starting to go back to normal. It's not looking as dynamic as it was earlier. Definitely not as bright. You tell by the histogram over here, there's not as much energy. So I don't know, guys. I'm thinking I need to call it. I'm kind of hungry anyway. I should probably eat something and do other things with my life. I want to get started on this time lapse too, because if I want to get this stacked and ready to go for tomorrow. If you guys are on my Patreon, my subscriptions, I'll share it early. I'll share it like when I finish processing it tonight, and then hopefully you can see it. So yeah, this doesn't mean we're necessarily going to get Aurora from this, guys. It's just there's a chance, but I just don't want you to think that this is a sure thing, because I just don't want you to be disappointed, and then you'll never join my streams again. But look at these cracks. Aren't these so cool? Look at the way it's like cracked into the chromosphere. Yeah, kind of crazy. Where do we go to view your time lapse? I will post it to all the channels. You don't have to go anywhere. I mean, just doom scrolling X, you'll probably see it. But yeah, I'll post it everywhere. I'll post it to X. I'll post it to Instagram. I'll post it to. It'll auto post, I think, on Facebook. Actually, I don't know if my reels do auto post to Facebook. I should probably check on that. I don't actively manage my Facebook account. It just automatically posts wherever I post to Instagram. See if there's any other questions, but I think I am going to end it, guys. I can't do this all day. It's too exhausting. I get too hungry and don't want to eat in front of you guys. And you got to take care of my dog, who's looking very bored right now. I'll scroll through the questions before I go. But yeah, if you just tuned in, this is the aftermath of a flare. I recommend watching the recording of the live on X or YouTube. I actually have no idea if it's visible on YouTube after I end it. I couldn't find my lives from the other day, so I don't really know how that works. I'm so bad at most of this stuff. So I'll just tell you to go to X. Go to X at A James McCarthy, and you'll find my live, and you'll be able to just watch the whole thing. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I am going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining my live. It's been wonderful. You guys are great. Hopefully you enjoyed watching what happened when a flare happens on the sun. And you might see news about this flare, and then you'll be like, hey, I was there, I saw it happen. But I'll share that time lapse, and hopefully you guys like the time lapse. Cool. Well, anyways, Andrew McCarthy signing off from Arizona. Cheers.